I think it's always interesting for everyone to know where your money goes. This is a chart of where federal spending actually goes. If you can see the top line there, the projected budget for next year from the president is $3.8 trillion. This chart shows you how your money is divided up. It's a blue chart here, what we call in Washington discretionary spending, and basically this purple maroon area is what we call mandatory spending. Mandatory spending includes 20% of the budget, Social Security, about 13% of the budget, Medicare, about 8% of the budget, Medicaid. Other mandatory program costs, these are programs that are basically on autopilot. Whatever the demand is, government automatically pays, such as farm payment, retirement programs, and other things that are being called disaster costs. That's now about 17% of the budget. If you add in interest on the debt, that yellow area right there, you're about 63% of your entire federal budget. It's just for those program areas. The blue area here is defense, and that's about 20% of the overall budget. And then what we call non-defense discretionary is about 14% of the budget. Traditionally, every year, the big budgetary battles occur around 14% of the budget. In a difficult time, a tense time, the United States is engaged in two war fronts, particularly in Iraq and Afghanistan. It's very difficult to talk about a reduction in national defense, basically off the table. These other programs are social safety net programs that are very important to the well-being of many Americans. They're highly sensitive. They're growing at a very rapid rate. That's the majority of the budget. So the intensity of scrutiny comes around what we call non-defense discretionary budget, 14%, which is roads and parks and education and everything else. A lot of us actually interact with the federal government on, and that again is only 14% of the budget. So you can clearly see that you can't balance your budget, and we have a very bad deficit, by just focusing on 14% of the overall pot. Now this is where your revenues come from. Now remember that spending number is $3.8 trillion. The revenue number is $2.56 trillion, so about $2.6 trillion. Now where does that come from? Individual income taxes is here, this purple area. That's about 45% of the overall federal revenues. Now it's close to 50% of Americans now basically pay no income tax. They'll pay payroll taxes but not income taxes. Payroll taxes are about 36% of the budget, this maroon here. Corporate tax is about 12%, and then other fees are the rest of it. So the big bulk of taxes is coming from payroll and individual income. So remember those numbers. Remember 3.8 and then 2.5. That difference is called a budget deficit. And this is where we're at. Spending 3.8, deficit 1.267, based upon the revenues of 2.5. And this is a gap that's a big problem. That gap has grown significantly in the last 2 years. It's continued to pile on debt after debt, so that we're now in a situation, and it shows you the growth of debt in the United States. We're at $13 trillion. You can see 1970 was close to $380 billion. Just 10 years ago, it was $5 trillion. Okay? Now it's at $13 trillion. And 2015 is projected to be $20 trillion. Now, what's the problem with all of this? This means that if we were to pay this off, everybody in the room right now owes government $42,000. Okay? Those of us with larger families, I have 5 kids, well, you do the math. I can't handle it. I work for the government. I don't have that much money. So it's a very big problem, because if this is not dealt with, if spending is not gotten under control, if you don't have the right economic growth policies to ensure new revenues coming into the government, what this does is it continues to push taxes in the form of bond indebtedness, because we have to sell bonds to pay for this. It pushes taxes up to children and grandchildren. Or it sells the wealth assets of this country overseas. China is now the biggest debt holder that we have. That not only has economic implications, it has national security implications. Or, as the federal government potentially what we call monetizes this debt that has inflationary impacts, which is a hidden form of taxation that particularly hurts the poor the most. So, you deserve a government with its fiscal house in order. That means hard decisions are going to have to be made about the right kind of combinations of spending reductions, as well as tax policies that get this house in order. If we don't do this, we're creating economic instability, higher taxes, higher interest rates, and long-term lower economic expectations for our country, and that's not right. Nebraska, and local government, state government, both Senator Johans and Senator Nelson have been governors. They've had to make the hard decisions. Congressman Smith and Terry and I have been on city councils. We've had to make hard decisions. Guess what? To balance our budgets. And there's never enough money. There's never enough money to take care of everything you absolutely want to do. So you have to set priorities, just like you do in your own family, about the revenues that you actually have, about the needs that you actually have to meet, and you just set priorities. And that's what we need to do at the federal level. And it's going to be difficult, but I think Nebraskans in general want this to be done. It's in our best interest that we work hard and sharing a bit of sacrifice now to get our fiscal house in order. So that's going to be the long term. We have a medium term challenge here as well, and this transcends partisan and political divides. It just has to be done for the sake of America. So we can get it done, but it's going to take will, and it's going to take courage, and it's going to take leadership, and it's going to take buy-in from the American people. But I think it's necessary. I think we all realize it's necessary.